Collingwood was aiming for the gap between Fogo and the vast three-decker Santa Ana, the flagship of Admiral Don Ignatius de Alava. Seeing his intent, Fogo closed up tight under Santa Ana's stern. Royal Sovereign sailed on under an increasingly deadly fire, with the eyes of all the English fleet on her. "See how that noble fellow Collingwood takes his ship into action. How I envy him," cried Nelson. And at the same time, Collingwood was saying to his fat, stupid, but undeniably brave captain, Edward Rotherham, "What would Nelson give to be here?" Hercules Robinson was also watching from the deck of Euryalus as she scurried around the fleet like a sheepdog with last-minute instructions. "How I see at this moment glorious old Collingwood, a quarter of a mile ahead of his second astern, and opening the battle with the magnificent black Santa Ana, cutting the tacks and shrouds and halyards of his studding sails as he reached her, and letting them drop in the water, grieving, I have no doubt, at the loss of so much beautiful canvas. And as his main yard caught the mizzen vangs of his opponent, discharging his double-shotted broadside into her stern. The first broadside killed and wounded more than 100 of Santa Ana's men and dismounted or destroyed so many of her guns that, in the first instant of the action, she was effectively finished as a battle unit. The two ships now became locked together, and although Santa Ana's gunners fought on, Captain Rotherham offered Collingwood his congratulations, believing Royal Sovereign had made a capture of an enemy flagship before any other ship in the British fleet had engaged. Even so, de Alava refused to strike, and soon Royal Sovereign was surrounded by enemy ships before she could be supported herself. Two Spanish ships, the San Justo and San Leandro, and the French Neptune and Fogo joined in, firing broadside after broadside into Royal Sovereign, so that within half an hour of the first engagement she was demasted and could no longer be manoeuvred. She and Santa Ana were now, as it were, locked in an embrace. It was as if two punch-drunk heavyweights were trading blows to the end, still somehow standing but barely conscious, and with the losers' seconds joining in. Cannonballs from the Royal Sovereign and Santa Ana were seen striking each other in mid-air and falling deformed and flattened into the water. It was as hard an action as there ever had been, and it was to the finish. Even so, Collingwood appeared unconcerned. Robinson caught sight of him again. Walking the break of the poop with his little triangular gold-laced cocked hat, tight silk stockings and buckles, musing over the progress of the fight, munching an apple. Calm he may have been, but by the end of the day Collingwood was one of only 3 officers, Rotherham included, left alive on his own quarterdeck. His master, William Chalmers, had been blown almost in two by a cannonball, and Collingwood caught him as he fell. He laid his head upon my shoulder and told me he was slain. I supported him till 2 men carried him off. He could say nothing to me but bless me, but as they carried him down he wished he could but live to read the account of the action in the newspaper. He lay in the cockpit among the wounded until the Santa Ana struck, and joining in the cheer which they gave her, expired with it on his lips. Collingwood himself had been wounded. A great splint had gashed his leg. He was the only officer in the fleet who failed to report to a surgeon, and he had been knocked down and winded by a cannonball which had passed within a hair's breadth of his old-fashioned tailcoat. Hello everybody, welcome to and welcome back to my channel Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark, and I hope ever so much that you're all doing well. So, you may have noticed I was reading something that had a rather nautical air to it, and I will get back to that particular book in a minute, because this is a 2-for-1 on naval books that I've read and finished in the last week or so. Now, first up, landlubbers, avast ye there. I want to share my thought, as I say, on these 2 books, both centered around naval life, both coming at different angles, somehow related. Maybe one character in the one character in the fiction book is based partly on a character in a non-fiction book. We'll see. Anyway, what's the first book, I hear you say? The first book was actually a reread, and I did it on audiobook, but I'm not going to hold up an audiobook. I read it the first time in book form, but this time, as I say, it was an audiobook, and it was a joy to listen to, and that was, if you can see it here, if it shows up, I don't know how dark it is, Master and Commander by, I don't know if you can even read it down there, can you? You can probably see it better there. Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brien, the first book in the Aubrey Maturin series, and it's brilliant. Yeah, it's great fun, fantastic. It's a great series. The first book, of course, maybe takes a bit of getting into. But I think if you persevere, you'll be absolutely thrilled that you do, especially as you move further on into the series. But that particular novel, the first one, follows the newly created Captain Jack Aubrey, a brash yet skilled officer in the Royal Navy, and his blossoming friendship with his surgeon, Stephen Maturin. There's more to Stephen Maturin, of course, than meets the eye. Not only is he a surgeon, physician, surgeon, and naturalist, there are other strings to his bow as well, which I won't give out here because I don't really want to spoil anything. One of the best parts about the book, of course, is the character dynamic between those two main characters, as well as watching Stephen come to terms with naval life, as well as Jack coming to terms with his newfound command as he takes command of HMS Sophie. Patrick O'Brien's writing, of course, is fantastic. His attention to detail is great. Sometimes I think it comes in for criticism as maybe too much attention to detail, because he, I think, really revels in the fact that as Stephen Maturin, one of the main characters, is so new to Navy life, that he is able then to use him as a conduit to explaining the intricacies and minutiae of sailing, late Georgian sailing ships in the Royal Navy. So for some people, maybe there's a bit too much technical stuff in there, but personally I found it very interesting. There is action in it, and the action is thrilling, but it's not all about that. And I think it really does kind of give you a wonderful understanding of sometimes the mundane nature of life in the Royal Navy, but he does it in a way that doesn't make it feel mundane when you are actually reading it, if that makes any sense. But it's a great book and a great start to a series that I think only gets better as you go along, although I've only read the first 7 and I've already restarted on the first one, but I do plan to go ahead with that. So if you fancy a thrilling story about camaraderie and adventure and naval life and Napoleonic warfare in the age of sail and all that kind of thing, that's full of details, strong characters, and pulse pounding action, then Master and Commander is a gem. And I think it's something that once you get into it, you will probably, more than likely, want to carry on with the series. So easily 5 stars again for me on the second time around. The next book I read, which I read the excerpt to you at the beginning, is this one here, Nelson's Own Hero, Admiral Collingwood by Max Adams. And this is a fascinating biography, albeit slightly short maybe. I know when I was reading reviews on it, that was some of the criticism, but perhaps that's also due maybe to, in some ways, lack, especially in his early years, to a lack of information. But nevertheless, it is a fascinating biography. He is, without a doubt, one of Britain's greatest, and I definitely think, sadly, overlooked naval heroes. He's very much in the shadow of his best friend, Lord Nelson, which I don't think Cuthbert Collingwood himself minds too much, but I do think for posterity's sake he deserves to be more highly thought of. I mean, I'm sure he is in the right circles, but he's not necessarily a name that appears on many people's lips as readily as Nelson does, partly probably because he didn't die in action, although in another way he did give his life to his country. And I think the interesting thing is Nelson, of course, is a brilliant character. Collingwood is a better naval man. He's probably more talented as a seaman. And I think it's fair to say, if I'm really honest, as much as I like reading about Nelson, I think we can probably say that, Nelson's a great media hero. And he's someone who, of course, did make the ultimate sacrifice for his country. But I don't think Nelson could have done what he did without the support of someone like Cuthbert Collingwood. Whereas Collingwood himself, I believe, would have plodded along and calmly munching apples throughout, big engagements and things without the need for a Lord Nelson. So I think he still would have been somebody more than capable of fighting a battle like Trafalgar had he been in charge rather than being the second in command. Although he wouldn't have been the poster boy that Nelson, of course, turned out to be. And maybe in some ways that's lucky for Collingwood, because, maybe he would have been the one who succumbed to the sniper's bullet. But the biography itself, I think, does show a very nice, deep and personal human portrait in the way it paints Collingwood as not just a naval leader, but a devoted father and husband, even though I say devoted father and husband, he does spend a huge amount of time from his family, but he loves them. You can tell that by the way he writes to them. He's a loyal friend, of course, to someone like Nelson, who absolutely, Nelson adores him, which is really quite a nice thing. And you can see that again in their letters and things. Collingwood, of course, is a steadfast patriot, but also for me, he is a big animal lover, and he has a dear old dog called Bounce that accompanies him on his naval service for the best part of 20 years. So it's pretty amazing. Adams does a great job with this book. He weaves together historical accounts, private letters, as well as strategic analyses and things like that to give us an insight into the man behind the legend. Collingwood's leadership style, of course, was different from Nelson. He was more pragmatic. He was more maybe steely and cool and calm. And I think he was extremely effective at that. He was also he was known as father by his men. He was stern but extremely fair. He was not prone to flogging for flogging's sake. He managed to maintain discipline with absolute minimum use of corporal punishment, which I think is a really amazing thing. And when he did die and he had his funeral back in the UK, in London, was it in London? Yes, because he's buried next to Nelson, which I think is also a nice thing. But hundreds of seamen of all ranks turned out for that funeral and openly wept for the loss of him. So just final thoughts really on these two books. What a great thing to read together in tandem. They both deliver in spades what they set out to do. O'Brien's novel, of course, as I say, sets that opening part of a journey through 20 or 21, if you count the unfinished work, novels of the Aubrey-Maturin series, and immerses you into that Napoleonic era naval life, whereas Adams, of course, offers this powerful real-world account of an amazing leader who really did help shape history. Not just British history, but European history, I suppose, with everything he did, both before and during Trafalgar, as well as dealing with the aftermath. So if you're a fan of naval history, be it fiction or non-fiction, I think you can't go wrong with giving either of these books a try. Of course, this I'm sure many of you watching will have read already. This maybe not, because I was upset to see it didn't have that many ratings on Goodreads. And the naval theme will continue for me, because I did read this as part of my Patreon book club pick for March with my wonderful patrons, and they have chosen, at least the ones who gave their input, to continue the Navy theme and read another biography this time on the life of Lord Cochrane. Cochrane the Dauntless, the life and adventures of Thomas Cochrane, who is said to be the primary inspiration for the character of Jack Aubrey in the Master and Commander books. However, there is also evidence to show that Collingwood too does provide Patrick O'Brian a lot of what do I want to say? You see, if I was good at editing, I would edit this out. A lot of, I want to say fodder, but it's the wrong word in this instance. Collingwood's life does provide Patrick O'Brian with a lot of inspiration too in his creation of Jack Aubrey. So probably we could say that Aubrey is an amalgamation of the two, and possibly more as well, of Britain's naval heroes. So there we have it. Check them out. I thoroughly recommend them both, and look forward to seeing you all next time. Do take care, everybody. All the best.